Good afternoon, class. Okay, so we're gonna take a look at my slide here, and we're gonna read the text all together, okay? Ready? Butterflies are winged insects with many fascinating attributes such as 4 wings, colorful patterns, and 2 antennae. All right, so last week we worked on context clues, and we know how to identify unknown words by the clues around them and the various types of context clues, okay? So using that prior knowledge, I want you to give me the definition of the word attributes when I pull your name from this jar of popsicle sticks, okay? Grayson.
All right, attributes are seemingly to be characteristics of something or someone.
Perfect, and I think that's a great example and definition. Can you justify how you came to that conclusion using context clues?
Well, an example of that would probably be that, as it says, such as 4 wings, colorful patterns, and 2 antennae, which are all characteristics which would make an attribute.
Great justification. All right, now we're going to transpose there. And so we can see, yes, that attributes is defined as a quality or characteristic of someone or something. So in this case, it was the quality or characteristics of the butterfly. Alrighty. So today's lessons will be about learning new vocabulary words in an expository passage, identifying their definitions through the context clues, and using them correctly in our writings. Our objective for today will be, I've written it on the board behind us, so let's say it all together. Given an expository text, students will write a paragraph using each vocabulary word in context correctly with 100% accuracy or 3 out of 3 words correct on a teacher checklist, which is just a lot of big fancy words for saying that we are going to learn 3 words and their meanings and then use them in a paragraph correctly, which I am sure we can all do. All right, something we could, of course, easily accomplish if we pay close attention to our readings and the clues they provide us. All right, so from our previous lesson on context clues, we remember that using context clues in order to identify new words is a useful skill that requires us to focus on the expository or passages around them, the words and sentences around them. So there are several types of context clues, such as description, definition, mood, tone, synonym, restatement, and example context clues. For the sake of today's assignment, we're going to be focusing on restatement and definition context clues when we read our expository passage. So let me skip to the next one. So then that comes to description/definition context clues. Description/definition context clues are clues that formally explain or define the vocabulary word in the same sentence or the one immediately following that. An example of this context clue may be his emaciation, that is, his skeletal-like appearance, was frightening to see, which lets us know as readers that this word emaciation means he's sickly. Emaciation means sickly or skeleton-like. All right, now we're going to read restatement context clues. And restatement context clues are words described in simplified language. So an example of this in a text may look like, many people describe me as loquacious. I never stop talking. So can someone apply what they know about the restatement type of context clue, this context clue right here, and turn to a shoulder partner, or me, the teacher, if you don't have a shoulder partner, and share what they think loquacious means? Go ahead.
I think loquacious means talkative.
Very good. So loquacious does mean talkative. That's a great example and definition of what that means. So now that we've reviewed our types of context clues and how to use them to identify new words and their definitions, we will apply this to our expository or nonfiction passage about the anatomy of a butterfly, my favorite insect. I'll pull it up. There we are. And some of you may have printed copies, but for those of you that don't, we will follow along on the smartboard. All right, so this is the article, Butterfly Anatomy, from the American Museum of Natural History. So our informal vocabulary assessments that we took last week were based off of this informational piece of text. And today we'll be finally reading as a class. So I'm going to go back to our slideshow for just a minute. This was the informal assessment that we took as a class. This example is from a student not in this class, so it's none of yours. And we can see that they gave great answers on all of them. I wanted a little more detail on ultraviolet light, so I included that into our vocabulary words we'll be discussing today. And then of course, proboscis and Lepidoptera were in the haven't seen it or not really knowing what it is, because those are strange new words, and I honestly had no idea what they were before I read this passage as well. So these 3 words are what we will be focusing on in our vocabulary worksheets that I'm going to be passing out to you. There will be these 3 vocabulary words: ultraviolet light, proboscis, and Lepidoptera, in this paper right here that I'm passing to you. And there's space for you to write their definitions. As I and students I call on read this passage, you will be responsible for filling out the definitions of the words to the best of your ability, using the context clues that we've discussed while we read this passage. Do we understand? Give me a thumbs up. Perfect. Okay. Now, we'll go back to our passage and begin reading. Alrighty. Can everybody see that?
Mm-hmm.
Genuinely?
Yes.
Give me a thumbs up.
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. All right. Butterfly Anatomy by Alvaro Kering. Colorful wings. The colors and patterns on butterfly wings come from tiny scales. Each scale contains granules of pigment or have a texture that produces a color or effect. Together, these scales add up like pixels of an image. Each scale attaches individually, allowing them to break off and help butterflies escape from spider webs. Scales are a defining feature of butterflies and moths, which is why the scientific name of their order, Lepidoptera, comes from lepidos and ptera, the Greek words for scale and wing. Wink, wink. That might be one of our vocabulary words we're talking about. All right. Amazing senses. Like other insects, butterflies have compound eyes made from hundreds of light-sensitive units called facets. Each segment is like a little eye with its own lens and light sensor. These eyes can detect motion and color and see ultraviolet light, which is invisible to humans. Wink, wink. Butterflies have amazing senses beyond just sight. They have the same senses as us, but use different organs. They smell with their antennae and taste with cells on their feet. And proboscis, the long straw-like appendage they use to suck up nectar from the flowers. When not eating, butterflies keep their proboscis coiled up. So in just that first page, we went through 3 of our vocabulary words. So I hope we were all listening. Other special sensors detect specific chemicals such as carbon dioxide. Antennae detect smells with thousands of hair-like receptors. All right. Now I'm going to call on someone to read the next 2 paragraphs for me, ending at shapes. Grayson, can you read that for me?
Yes, I can. The Davis family butterfly vivarium includes both butterflies and moths, which are both Lepidoptera, but they have a few distinguishing features. Butterflies have a bulb on their antennae, while butterflies all have the same kind of antennae. Most moth antennae feature a variety of shapes.
So again, we've seen that vocabulary word Lepidoptera, and both butterflies and moths are Lepidoptera, so that is their name, the collective name. Alrighty. Butterflies don't wrap their pupa in a silken cocoon like most moths do. The butterfly pupa form a cuticle, also called a chrysalis, that encloses its head and body. Many moth species wrap themselves in a silk covering called a cocoon. I did not know that. There are over 140,000 species of moths. Most moths fly at night and have subtle patterns, but they also include colorful types, huge and small species, and ones active at day. There's actually no biological definition of a moth. The word moth is just the common, non-scientific term for all Lepidoptera that are not butterflies. Now, can somebody read the first paragraph under defensive adaptations? Grayson?
Yes, I can. Butterflies don't bite or sting, but some have toxins in their bodies. Many toxic butterflies are brightly colored, a warning to predators. An animal that eats one remembers the experience and avoids butterflies colored in the same way.
In contrast to bright butterflies, some evade predators by blending into the background. With subtle colors and special wing shapes, they imitate dried leaves, bark, or lichen. And so see, we have here the Kallima butterfly that perfectly resembles a dry leaf, complete with a tail that looks like a stem. When its wings are folded, the Kallima butterfly looks almost exactly like a dead leaf, with a wing pattern that even has an imitation stem, veins, and blotches. It's very impressive. Mimics to survive. You're not seeing double. These are two different species. One of them is poisonous, the crimson rose on the right, and the other, the common Mormon, is a copycat that fools predators into leaving it alone by looking nearly identical to its distasteful model. When a non-poisonous animal looks like a poisonous one, scientists call this a Batesian mimicry. And one of these butterflies is my personal favorite, the monarch. Grayson, can you please read that last paragraph for us?
Yes, ma'am. Two poisonous species, like monarch and the viceroy butterflies, can evolve to look like each other, amplifying the message, "Don't eat me," to predators. When toxic animals evolve the same appearance, scientists call it Müllerian mimicry.
Good job. Great emphasis on the "do not eat me." It was great inflection. Alrighty. So now that we've read our expository passage, I'm going to ask you to all take those vocabulary sheets with your filled in definitions that I know we all filled in because you're so diligent. And I'd like you to turn to a shoulder partner once again and defend each of the definitions you gave each of the chosen vocabulary words. Remember ultraviolet light, proboscis, and Lepidoptera, and the reasoning behind why you came to those conclusions, hence your context clues that you used to get those definitions, okay? And if you do not have a shoulder partner, please talk to me, the teacher. So Grayson, did you find your definitions?
I did find my definitions,
Okay.
I did.
Would you like to share them?
I would love to share them.
Okay, so ultraviolet light?
Ultraviolet light is light that the human eye cannot see.
Yes, and that the butterflies can.
Yes.
This is very interesting. And how did you come to that conclusion?
It says so in the text.
Very right. All right, and proboscis?
Proboscis is the straw-like appendage that comes from the butterfly's head that they use to eat food and other
Perfect.
nutrients.
And which type of context clue did that? Okay, which one is it was in the text?
It was a
that told us?
definition. It was a definition
Yes.
context.
I do believe you're correct. All right, and Lepidoptera?
Lepidoptera is the species order of both butterflies and moths.
Perfect. And how'd you come to that conclusion?
That was a definition context clue that lied in the text.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right. I am listening to everybody's conversation and scanning the room for your answers just to double check. And I think we've got it all put together. Alrighty. I'm going to go to our final slide that explains each of these vocabulary words and their definitions. Ultraviolet light, ultraviolet, or UV light, has shorter wavelengths than visible light. Although UV waves are invisible to the human eye, some insects, such as bumblebees and butterflies, can see them. Proboscis. A proboscis is an elongated feeding tube attached to the head of a butterfly. And I have attached the part of the passage that gave us that definition. I won't read that since we've just read it. And Lepidoptera, an order of insects that comprises the butterflies and moths. They have 4 large scale-covered wings that bear distinctive markings and larvae that are caterpillars. And then again, I've added in the part of the expository passage that gives us that definition. So I hope we all did well on that. So just to recap, today's lesson has been about learning these new 3 vocabulary words. We identified them in the passage with their definitions through context clues, and now we're just going to be using them correctly in our writings. We're going to write a paragraph. So our objective for today, can we remember what that was? I'm gonna have us look back up to the board and recite it all together once again when we're ready. Give me a thumbs up when we're ready. All right. Given an expository text, students will write a paragraph using each of the vocabulary word in context correctly, with 100% accuracy or 3 out of 3 words correct on a teacher's checklist, which we know is just a bunch of fancy words for we're gonna write a paragraph using these 3 words that we know so well. All right. So now that we have our definitions and we have them in our brains, I'm going to have you clear your desk of that vocabulary worksheet and everything except for a piece of paper and a pencil. So we see our 3 vocabulary words here up on the board. I will display them in the spellings in case we have difficulty with that. And you're going to be instructed to write a paragraph using each of these words correctly according to the definitions that we've just discussed. So when you're finished, you'll be instructed to stay seated and quietly turn your papers over. Please use your own words, and a paragraph should at least be 4 sentences. Let's remember that. So can somebody repeat to me back the directions I just gave with a raise of hand? Grayson?
Yes, that we must write a paragraph with those 3 words and using them correctly.
Yes, perfect. And then when you're all done, what are you gonna do?
We're gonna turn over a piece of paper and tell you and read it to you aloud. Yes.
Almost. We're gonna turn over our paper, but are we gonna read out loud or are we gonna sit down quietly?
We're gonna sit down
Oh,
quietly.
perfect. Thank you so much. Alrighty. And now that everybody's done and turned in all of their examples and all of their paragraphs, we will wrap up this lesson by looking at my example of a paragraph using our 3 vocabulary words we just learned. I'll read that aloud to you. Today we learned about the anatomy of my favorite insect in the entire world, the butterfly. Although butterflies and moths are both Lepidoptera, I will always prefer butterflies. Butterflies have the unique ability to see ultraviolet light, a light from the sun that a human eye cannot detect. The most interesting part of today's lesson was learning that the proboscis is a straw-like organ used by butterflies to drink nectar from flowers. There we go, and that concludes the end of our lesson. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.